Tina asked me to talk to your garden club about like identifying birds and also maybe like setting up bird feeders in your backyard. And so I'm going to sort of combine those things into two. And so I just called this, we're going to attract and identify backyard birds. And this is me, Charlie Scheim. I'm from the Delaware-Otsego Audubon Society. I've been a birder since I was in college, really. It was in the 70s. And right now I'm the treasurer of the DOAS, that's the Delaware-Otsego Audubon Society. I'm also one of the regional coordinators for this thing called the New York State Breeding Bird Survey, where people go out and try to document what species are breeding in New York State. And then finally, I've been the coordinator for the Fort Plain Christmas Bird Count, which happened, like this year, it happened on January 1st, so it's a wintertime kind of thing, of course. Most of the time, you guys are not getting the full benefit here. Usually my wife, Sandy Bright, is with me, and she provides all of the color and pizzazz and that sort of thing. But we somehow double booked ourselves for tonight, and so she's actually up in Cooperstown leading a woodcock walk while I'm down here doing this. I'm not any sort of an ornithologist or anything like that. I'm strictly an amateur birder, and in fact, professionally, I used to be a math professor at Harvard College. I was there for 38 years. Now I'm happily retired and really, really liking it. So, just the first thing, when you try to set up bird feeders in your backyard, as best as you can, it's good to have a variety of types of bird feeders because birds eat in a variety of different ways. And so, like, for example, some birds like to perch. Oh, let me just get my pointer. Hello. So some birds like to perch on things as if they were branches, you know, and they eat that way. Other birds, on the other hand, though, usually eat while they're on the ground. And so if you want those kind of birds to be bird feeders, they need a flat place to stand. And so these kind of feeders with a platform like that, and then usually a little roof over to keep the seeds dry during the rain, work really well for that. Other birds can cling. So like this woodpecker here can cling to that log, and that log is filled with little things of peanut butter or suet or something like that. Or these wire cage kind of things, or these birds are clinging to a screen kind of feeder. And we'll talk about all of that stuff as we go along. But that's the important to think about is, can you get a variety of feeders in your yard? Come on in, folks. And when you do, one of the first birds that are going to come to your yard. Do you want to come in? This is great. I was thinking there would be like 3 people here.
You never know.
Yeah.
Is this for me?
Sure.
Front row? Oh, let's go to front row.
Okay. So one of the first birds that's going to come to your bird feeder is this little guy, the black-capped chickadee, or people just call it a chickadee. But there are actually a bunch of different types of chickadees in the country. Like in Florida, for example, we were just down there. They have Carolina chickadees down there. They look very similar, but they're slightly different. Hi. These are such great little birds. They're like really adventurous and they're very brave. You know, you can walk out into the yard while a chickadee's at the feeder and
no way.
It won't fly away. And in fact, if you're really quiet and gentle, you can sit down with seeds in your hand and chickadees will come to your hand. Now, as long as you have to make sure there's no other food sources around, they'll pick something else if they can. But if there's nothing else, And I've done this, Sandy Marth has done it too, where you just sit there and don't move, and the chickadees will just come in. It feels so cool, feeling their little bird feet claws on your fingertips. It's just so neat. Now another one that will come right away too is the tufted titmouse. And I just want to, as you're trying to learn how to identify birds, it's important to look for different characteristics. Like for example, I'm going to go back to that chickadee for a moment. Wow, this is great. Come on in, folks. She could sit maybe over there if she can see. It's okay, sit down now. So again, if you're thinking about how to identify birds, it's important to notice differences between birds. And so like for example, this bird here, the chickadee, notice his head is kind of round, right? Whereas this next bird that we're talking about, the titmouse, has that kind of crest on top of its head. Some birds have a crest, others don't. And that's one of the things you can think about then is, what do I see? Does this bird have a crest? Does this bird have this? Does it have that? And so on. And so as birders, we look for those kind of identifying characteristics for the birds that we're looking at. And chickadees will come to bird feeders very readily. Also, this picture just reminds you that birds need water, especially in wintertime. They really need water because it's all frozen. And so if you, in your backyard bird feeding thing, can provide water for birds, you'll get to watch them drink, you'll get to watch them take baths. Even in the middle of the winter, birds want to take baths. And so we have a bird bath that's actually heated. You just plug it in, and it doesn't seem to use much in the way of electricity at all. And here's a video. This is going to show you chickadees and titmice at a bird feeder. So we'll just get used to thinking about them. So this is a bird feeder that someone has suction cupped to their window. And so there's a chickadee. That's the one we were just talking about. Notice that black chin thing. And here, there's the bird with the crest. That's the titmouse, isn't it? And notice what they do. They pick up a seed and they hold it on their feet, like against a branch or a perch, and they peck at the seed, trying to get little bits off of it. Because they're such small birds, they're not very strong. Whereas other birds can just crack seeds in their beaks. And lots of times what you'll see is the bird will take a seed and fly away immediately. It's dangerous being a bird. The whole time you're, first of all, you don't have a grocery store, you're constantly, all your life, searching for food to eat. And then, while you're trying to eat, you're also worried about something eating you. And so birds are very, very cautious. And that's why a lot of times these birds will just grab a seed and get out of there. Whereas this little guy has one under his foot, and he's eating it. So this is a very fun kind of feeder that you can put in your house. Just suction cup it right to a window. You can even buy, if you want, they have like film that you can put on a window that makes it be a one-way mirror kind of thing. You can see out, but the birds can't see you, which is a really handy thing. We have that at our house.
Did you see it from here?
So you can, hopefully by this point, you're in your head thinking, oh, that's a titmouse. There was a chickadee. You start to pick up that idea right away. There's a chickadee. And there's another one. And another one. They're very eager to come to bird feeders, chickadees and titmice. Okay. Now, people love birds with color. I mean, the two ones we've just looked there were black and white and gray, kind of boring. But northern cardinals are like most people's very favorite bird. Artists,
Sorry.
that's okay. Artists love having Christmas cards with a bright red cardinal in a pine tree with snow all around. It just looks great, you know. This is the bird, the northern cardinal. Bright red bird, this black face mask, and notice the bill is an orange color like that. They love coming to bird feeders. All summer, all winter, they'll come to your bird feeder. And they especially like these black oil sunflower seeds. And I'll play you the sound of a cardinal too. Here we go.
You can't play that with a laser.
No, unfortunately not. I wish I could. There we go. It's really helpful to get to know bird sounds. You know, that way, I'm in my house, I hear this and I think, oh, there's a cardinal out there. And so I go outside and look for it, you know? These guys have a very whistly kind of sound, as you can tell. And they make a variety of different sounds with that voice. In most species, it's the males that sing, but cardinals, both males and females, will sing. And males sing for two main reasons. One, to attract a female, or secondly, to drive away any competitors for that female. That's what bird life is all about, either procreating or eating, and that's all there is to it, you know? Okay. And so here, these are what black oil sunflower seeds look like. These are regular kind of sunflower seeds that you might get like in a snack package or something like that for people. But these ones, black oil sunflower seeds, birds absolutely love them. If you were just going to have one kind of seed in your backyard, I would have that, black oil sunflower seed. You can buy big, huge bags of it. You can buy it with the hulls taken off already. My wife Sandy, she's so considerate. She loves to just put out the seeds with no hulls and think, oh, it's so much easier for the mother when she has to feed her babies. And I'm just cheap and I would buy the ones in the shelves, you know. Now, cardinals, so this is a little bit more of bird knowledge. Some species don't look alike, male and female. It's called gender dimorphic, two body shapes, two body types by gender. This is the male, this is the female. Notice they kind of look the same in their structure, their body structure and all. They have that same orange bill, but the males almost always are bright colors because they want to attract a female or they want to attract the attention of competitors for that female and drive them away. Females, on the other hand, are almost always sort of a dull color, like this female is basically brown with a bit of the hints of red in it here and there. And that makes sense because females have to sit on the nest with eggs or with young. They don't want to attract attention. They want to be as quietly unobtrusive as possible so that no predators come to find their babies. At our house, we've had this really cool bird. It's a female cardinal, but she's what they call partially leucistic, that basically kind of like partially albino. Her head feathers are white. She has kind of a little pink eyebrow and a little pink crest and sort of this little cheek patch, but basically her head is white. We started seeing her come into our yard a couple of years ago, and she just keeps coming back. She and a mate, there's the mate right there, they come all summer, all winter. Last summer they brought babies to the feeder. It's so cool to have a bird that you can actually just identify as this is someone who I've seen before, you know? It's not the usual thing with birds.
Are their mates lifelong mates or do they switch?
They switch around. They might, part of the problem is bird lives are not very long. And so lots of times, like over the winter, one of them two will die. And then the remaining one will search for a new mate. But bigger birds, like eagles, for example, they will mate for life as long as each one lives. And that might be 20 years or 30 years.
Wow.
Smaller birds, though, only tend to live maybe a year or two. And so, yeah, like I said before, bird life is really hard. You have to work really hard to find food. You have to worry about people grabbing you. You die quickly. It's just a sad thing. It's cold, they don't have little heaters, that sort of thing. So, but anyway, this has been a really neat thing to see this bird come back now for a couple of years. And this is the feeders in our backyard. I live in the city of Oneonta, by the way. Now, another bird that comes to feeders pretty readily is the blue jay. And now, again, I want to just talk about identifying characteristics. Notice the blue jay is another bird that has that crest. So of the four that we've seen so far, chickadee, titmouse, cardinal, and blue jay, those last three have all had that crest. So there's something that you look for when you're thinking about what kind of bird is that. And blue jays, they're loud, raucous kind of birds. Here's the sound of them actually right here. That's where they get their name, Jay. They make that sound too, which is kind of a cool sound. So people tend to think of blue jays, they're bigger. So chickadees are small, like about, say, this big or so, 3 or 4 inches high. Blue jays are quite a bit bigger. They're like about this big. And when birds are bigger, they just come flying into a bird feeder and all the small birds scatter because they think it's something that's a threat to them. They don't know, blue jays, those are safe, that kind of thing. And so people tend to think of blue jays as bully birds. Like they just come in and bully away all the other birds. But it's really just a matter of, here's this big galoot that comes in and lands and doesn't even think about the other birds that are there, So it's not so much bullying as just being there. But anyway, they're such attractive birds. When you see, from here it looks pretty cool, but on the back, that color pattern, to me, is just so nice to look at. The white and the black little stripes in there, they're beautiful birds, I think. And they're interesting, too. They take food from your bird feeder and they cache it in different places, like in cracks between tree bark and stuff like that. If you put out actual peanuts in shells, they will take the peanuts away and cache them elsewhere for food later on. Not that many birds do that caching thing, just a few do. There are a bunch of different kinds of jays in this country, and a lot of jays cache food. Now, another type of bird that comes to bird feeders really readily is what's called the white-breasted nuthatch. There are several different kinds of nuthatches around here. The white-breasted is the most common one. They're interesting birds. They like to be upside down, like that guy is. They go along the trunk of a tree, usually like from top to bottom, head down like that, looking for little bugs and insects in the bark of the tree, or perhaps they often will climb along a tree branch underneath, looking up like that, and picking out the insects that they find. They love to come to suet feeders. That's what this is, a kind of a fat suet, and I want to talk about that so you'll know about it. Lots of birds like suet. Chickadees will come to suet, titmice, nuthatches. Cardinals don't, because they don't have the ability to grab onto that wire thing or anything like that. That if they could land on a cake of suet on the ground, they might eat it, but otherwise they don't. So let me show you. Suet is just fat. You can just buy packages of beef fat at the grocery store and use that. Just cut up a chunk of it and put it into one of those wire feeders, for example. Or you can buy pre-packaged suet things that have all kinds of interesting stuff in them, things that we think the birds will like maybe corn or bird seeds or something like that. Or you can even make your own. And here's a recipe: lard and peanut butter, oats, cornmeal, flour, sugar, raisins, wild bird food. you can be creative and just make your own. I know a guy who the deer that he hunts, he takes the fat from those deers and renders it down and makes suet out of the deer fat. And we've actually seen, as we've been out in the wintertime, we've seen chickadees come to deer carcasses, picking away at the deer fat that's on there. So they're getting natural suet, I suppose you could call it.
This isn't going to bring other animals to your area.
Well, that is possible.
Yes.
Sure. Like, for example, I'll just say it right now. If you folks have bears around, you don't want to put out food. At least not in the time, especially when the young bears come out of the den. That's the time when bears are most active. They will come to your yard, they'll rip down all your feeders, and of course, it's dangerous. They'll come up on your back porch. So you just want to be careful about that kind of thing.
Garbage.
Yeah, they'll take your garbage, yeah. And so then you can either put the suet in something like this, or you can get creative. You can melt it all down and dribble it on pine cones, or we once took a log and we drilled a whole bunch of holes in the log and then packed suet into the holes of the log. The birds love this stuff, and they will come in flocks to eat suet. This is another nuthatch that's in the area, a red-breasted nuthatch. So I just want to compare the two. So notice red-breasted nuthatch. Now, Sandy, this is my wife who's not here, but of course it always provides all the color for these stars. She'll always point out that ornithologists are terrible at naming birds for colors. Now, why would anyone call this a red-breasted nuthatch? It's just beyond anyone, right? You might call it the rusty-breasted nuthatch or the tan nuthatch, something like that. But ornithologists call it a red-breasted nuthatch. So notice, I just want to notice now, this bird, first of all, they don't have a crest. They have a round head. This bird has this white face with a black eye stripe. Now, if you compare that to the white-breasted nuthatch in the other picture, there was that one, okay? White face, no eye stripe, right? And completely white underneath, except back there at the rear end, there's a little bit of reddish. But so those are the kind of differences that you look for when you're trying to learn to identify birds, is where is colored where, you know, and if two birds kind of look alike, you try to distinguish for yourself the differences between them. Oh, by the way, if you have questions at any time, please feel free to just ask. I'm not in any way controlling about things, so I'm happy to have people ask questions. Okay. So, and here's just a picture of a red-breasted nuthatch hanging upside down from a pine cone. Nuthatches do this all the time. They hang upside down from branches, from tree trunks, from bird feeder things. It's just their preferred way of eating. So here's another bird that comes along, the dark-eyed junco. Now, again, thinking about characteristics that identify the birds. This bird, that gray and white delineation kind of right across the chest there, there's no other bird around here that has that. And also, notice in the tail, those white feathers on each side of the tail. Lots of times as I'm driving along, I just get the briefest glimpse of some birds flying away. But you see that white and you think, oh, that's a junco. I just know it, you know? Because there's very few birds, and there's no other small bird like a junco. The juncos are only, you know, like about this big or so. There's no other small bird that has that white in the tail like that.
Carolina wren, maybe? I always get confused. This one, Carolina wren, and the phoebes.
Okay, right. So Carolina wrens, they're brown birds, first of all, and they have a white eye stripe and kind of a rusty brown kind of a cap on them, but they're about the same size. And then phoebes are kind of a greenish gray color, and they're only around in the summertime. Whereas those other two, juncos and Carolina wrens, they'll be around all year. And lots of these birds are here in the wintertime as well. You know, people talk about birds heading south. Not all species head south. Cardinals stay here all year round. Chickadees, nuthatches, they'll all be here all year round.
In the morning when I open up the door, the first thing there are the chickadees and the juncos. They're waiting in the bushes for me to put up the feeders.
Yeah,
We
that's
have
right.
to take it down because of bear.
Because of the bears. Yeah,
Yeah.
good
Can't
idea.
leave it
Right.
up.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. They are very eager to have food come, and they get to know that you're
Yeah.
going to put out food, and
Yeah.
they get you.
And they wait for hours before, if I don't go out,
They're still
they're
there
they're
waiting.
just waiting in the bushes.
Right. Okay. And so one thing that these guys do, you'll see them along a roadside, and they're eating bugs or seeds or grit. Lots of birds eat little pieces of dirt. Grits are really little pebbles, teeny little things. It helps in their digestion. Birds eat their food, it goes into their crop where it stays for a while, and then it gets digested in the stomach. And these little bits of dirt help them digest the food because, of course, they don't have any teeth, and so when you think about the chickadee that ate those little pieces of the seed, still it's swallowing the little chunks of seed, and it somehow has to digest them further, and the grit helps them do that. And so lots of times, especially, in the roads around town here, those kind of dirt roads, you'll drive along, you'll see a whole bunch of birds suddenly fly off, and you look at their tails and you'll see that little white stripe, you'll know, oh, those are juncos, because they're the most common bird that you see gritting on the road. And they're ground feeders in general. And here's an example of a person that had a good idea. They wanted to have juncos come into their yard. They just set their bird feeder on a table and let the seeds spill out. And here, I'll show you how these guys are feeding. Notice there are two slightly different colors. Either a good gray color like that or kind of a grayish brown color. I used to think it was the gender difference, but it's not. It's just like two different races of the same species. But you notice they're just picking seeds up off the ground. And so like at our house, the juncos are always on the ground underneath all of the bird feeders, picking up all the seeds that have fallen down, and they get a big meal out of it. Because birds are not very neat in the way they eat seeds from your bird feeder. Okay, so we'll stop there and go on. So another whole group of birds that we have around here are woodpeckers. There's a bunch of different kinds of woodpeckers in this area. The most common ones are downy woodpeckers. This is a species where the males and females look almost exactly the same, except that the males have this little red thing on the back of their head, like right back here, where we men would go bald. The woodpeckers, male woodpeckers, get this little red crest like that. And that's a very easy way to tell males from females of woodpeckers. And downy woodpeckers, again, they go climbing up tree branches. Usually they go up, whereas nuthatches kind of climb down. They're picking bugs off the tree branches or out of little crevices. They love to come to suet feeders. There will be woodpeckers at your suet feeders for sure if you put some up. And the second kind of woodpecker, unfortunately, looks just like the first. This is a hairy woodpecker. This is a downy woodpecker. They are very hard to tell the actual difference between them, except that the hairies are way bigger than the downies are. You see that difference in the size. Their beak looks like a real weapon, whereas this one just looks like something used to eat. They have a much stronger voice than downy woodpeckers do, but they're fairly common around here too. And so if you have suet feeders, especially at your house, you'll probably see both downy and hairy woodpeckers come to them. And another kind of woodpecker. So this is another example. This is the red-bellied woodpecker. It's just, I don't know who thought of this. I might have called this the slightly barely tan and orange red-bellied woodpecker, perhaps, or the red-capped woodpecker. There is a red-headed woodpecker where the head is entirely red. That's a whole different kind of woodpecker. We don't even have them around here. So you couldn't use that name, but they could use something better than red-bellied woodpecker. But all woodpeckers love coming to suet. This guy will definitely come to suet. These are interesting birds because now I've lived here since 1980. in the 80s and 90s, there were no red-bellied woodpeckers around here. They're a southern woodpecker. And it's only been in the last like 10 or 15 years that they've started to come into this area, and now they're quite common in our area. And I expect that's because of climate change. As the winters warm up around here and the general seasons are warmer, the birds that were in the south are slowly migrating to the north as well, expanding their range. Do you have a question?
I thought that was a northern flicker.
Nope. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at my book when I get home. Wow.
Yeah, I if I went hunting for my computer, I could show you pictures, but
No, I believe you.
yes. Yeah, okay.
Listening in there.
There you go. This is the last one that we have around here. This pileated woodpecker, they are huge. They are big birds. They're like this big or so.
Are they really?
I think they look like a pterodactyl as they fly because they have that head. Just notice the shape of this guy's head, and when he flies, he has that same kind of head, like like pterodactyls had.
Yeah.
They look like that. They have this bright red crest. This one is a female. The males will have a red cheek patch, like right there, like that. They make enormous holes in trees, as you can see. If you're walking through the woods and you see big holes in a tree like that, you know that came from a pileated woodpecker. And they're either digging into the tree for bugs and stuff that have infested the tree trunk, or they're drilling out a hole for a roost or a nest kind of thing. They live in, there's a bunch of birds are called cavity nesters. They find a cavity in which they like to live. Woodpeckers are all cavity nesters. Chickadees are actually cavity nesters. They'll, if you're careful and you watch a chickadee for a while, especially at this time of year, you'll see them go to an old stump and sort of disappear and come out, and they spit out all this little sawdust stuff. This chickadee is going in and excavating a little hole as a nest, and the baby birds will be inside there when they're born. It's a kind of a cool thing. And it's different. Excuse me?
I've never seen one of these. Are they fairly common?
I could say they're not uncommon, but I wouldn't say they're fairly common. Like if I were out birding, say, for 5 or 6 days, I think I would see one at least once in those 5 or 6 days. Whereas downy woodpeckers, I would expect to see one every time I go out birding, as long as they're in the right habitat. Any other questions about these? Sure.
Sometimes I'm in the woods, I hear the flickers and I hear the pileated woodpeckers, and sometimes you really got to listen close because they sound almost the same.
That's right. They are very much the same. They don't have the sound of a pileated woodpecker. They are very loud, wah, 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 kind of sound, whereas the flicker is not quite as loud and strong, but it lasts for a longer time.
Yeah.
So it goes like wah, 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 for quite a long time. I'm not very good at making bird sounds, but I'm not embarrassed to try either. Are you from Boston by any chance?
No, New York, well, Long Island.
I knew
okay,
that.
right.
You knew that? I knew that because you're a mile away.
I grew up around Boston, and so I always, when I hear people with a possible accent, I ask them about it.
Yeah.
Okay, here is a more colorful bird, goldfinches. These birds will come to your feeders for sure. They're beautiful birds, bright yellow with this black cap and black wings. Again, gender dimorphic. This is the male, there's the female. And once again, the females have kind of the same color pattern, is just duller in general. The males are bright because they're trying to attract attention. The females are dull because they're not trying to attract attention. And again, here's goldfinches sitting at a bird bath. Definitely get a bird bath. It's so much fun. You can watch them drink, you can watch them take baths. They get actually in the water and splashing all around. It looks really neat.
Do you recommend sun or shade for that bird bath?
In the summertime, either is fine. Sun or shade, doesn't matter, yeah. And in the wintertime, of course, it's got to be heated if you put one in. Goldfinches, they like to eat Niger seed, or people call it thistle seed. And so that's the next kind of seed that I want to tell you about. They'll also eat that black oil sunflower seed that I told you about before. But this Niger seed, so it's seeds from a daisy, an African yellow daisy. There is the name of it. You guys at the garden club, you must know that kind of thing. I know it less. But anyway, they're called Niger seed because they originally came from Nigeria, those flowers, and so they ended up calling it Niger seed. They're teeny little seeds. You can't quite tell it from that picture, but they're like little chocolate sprinkles kind of thing. And so they're very tiny seeds. You need a bird feeder with very tiny openings, otherwise all the seed just falls right out. And so feeders for Niger seed usually just have like a screen like that, and the birds will cling to the screen and just pull the little seeds out through the screen like that. Lots of other birds, chickadees. In fact, here's the picture. There's 2 goldfinches and a chickadee. Lots of birds like to come and eat Niger seed. The bigger birds, cardinals, blue jays, they never do. But small birds will. Now, goldfinches have an interesting pattern to them. They get what's called a winter plumage. So in the previous picture, notice they're bright yellow, okay? But in the wintertime, goldfinches, lots of them stay around, although some head south, but lots of them do stay. But they get a duller brown color to them. And it looks like a completely different bird, you know? It's not yellow in any way. And even, you know, like when we're down in Florida, we go down to Florida usually like for a month or so. And when we're down there, the goldfinches down there look like that. It's not that it's not the winter that makes them get that winter plumage. It's the change in the season and the change in the sunlight and so on that causes them to lose their bright yellow feathers, and that's what they call in birds molting, when all of their old feathers fall out and they get new feathers that grow in. Some birds just come in the same color, others come in a different color. Somebody question?
Yeah, in November, I used to have a place up in South Court, I seen a finch that was black and white, like I guess it was an albino. And the reason why I know it was a finch because they fly like this.
That's true. That's right.
So
yes.
It had to be a finch, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. So this fellow makes an interesting observation. Most birds just kind of fly very directly, but goldfinches, they'll kind of fly like they like flap, 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 and they go like flap, 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 flap. And so like they're flapping to gain height, and then they just kind of glide a little bit, and they go down, and then they start flapping again. And the whole time they're doing that, they're saying chickadee, 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 and it's like they're kind of doing this breaststroke or something. It's an amusing thing to watch. Now, there are some birds that only come to feeders briefly. Baltimore Orioles one. They're spectacular birds. The male is this bright yellow-orange kind of color underneath with this dark black head and the white in the wings. The females have, again, that same pattern, but it's duller. For the wintertime, they definitely go south. And by south, we mean Central America, South America. It's not just Florida for them. And so, to get back or to get there, they have to fly across the Gulf of Mexico, which is nonstop flying for 500 miles. It's an exhausting thing. Hummingbirds do this too. Yeah. They go to South America, and then they fly across the Gulf of Mexico to get back. These little teeny weeny birds, and they can't stop to get anything to eat, you know, because there's no place to stop. Hummingbirds are famous for just kind of, as they get up to, like, say, Alabama, that area, they just fall to the ground. And people can just see hummingbirds lying on the ground because they're completely exhausted by making this trip across the ocean. It's, like I keep saying, the life of a bird is in no way easy. It's a very hard life.
Wonderful thing. How long do they lay there before they get up and finish the trip?
For a couple of hours, oftentimes. And of course, they're very vulnerable at that point. But they're also, it's a very popular thing for birders to go and like set up a whole bunch of hummingbird feeders hanging on a rope or something to try to get these birds some sustenance so they can get on with their migration. And so orioles, as they come into our area, they've been migrating for, I don't know, so from here to Florida is like 1,200, 1,500 miles, and then another 500 across the Gulf. I mean, they've been migrating for over 2,000 miles. Now, that's not one continuous flight, of course. It is across the ocean, but not across the United States. They stop overnight, that sort of thing. But they're really tired and hungry. When they get here, they will go to your bird feeders for sure, because they are just desperately looking for food. And they're very vocal. They, I'll play you their song. You hear that song a lot if you know bird sounds. You hear that song a lot probably in May, like say from about mid-May to mid-June or so. You'll hear that, and at that time they will come to your bird feeders, and they really like to eat fruit. You'll find. I'm going to switch over. They love oranges. People put out half oranges, and they'll come to them. They like grape jelly. Or they also like grapes. It's surprising. I've never really understood this before, but lots of birds like grapes. And so Sandy, my wife, she will cut grapes in half. She's very dedicated to this kind of thing. She cuts grapes in half and then puts out like a little Pyrex dish of grapes. And orioles will come to it, cardinals will come to it, robins will come. Almost every bird will come to get a grape. And they come like right away. And they just keep coming back, and the grapes will be gone, in like 2 hours. It's kind of cool. But anyway, this is how you attract orioles to a feeder, is having that kind of fruit, or grape jelly is another one. And orioles they make an interesting nest. You think of bird nests, they're kind of like these little woven circles made out of plant fibers and maybe some sticks or something like that. Orioles make these things that look like an old sock or a hammock or something like that. They take all these fibers and they weave them together, and they even use like spider web stuff as they weave together. And they lay their eggs down inside of that sock there, and the babies are born, and here they are, begging to be fed. And baby birds, I don't know if you've ever had the joy of seeing a nest. Like some people, robins might make nests in your window box, and you might see it that way. Baby birds always have a big mouth for their head, and it's brightly colored. It'll be either a kind of bright pink or bright orange or something like that. And that's to let the adults key in on this mouth needs to be fed. And it's just a thing in birds, a psychological thing. When they see that kind of opening, they will feed it. And there are even lots of videos on the internet of birds feeding fish, because fish like koi in them. They come to the surface, they open their mouth, there's this orange thing, the bird drops some food in it, like a breadcrumb or something like that. It's just a kind of a mental reaction that birds have to that bright open mouth. So another bird that is just a springtime visitor. This is a spectacular bird, the rose-breasted grosbeak. They have that slash of really bright red there against their white breast and black head. There's a bird listserv called OS Birds that I subscribe to, and you can subscribe to it too. People are always writing in when the orioles and the rose-breasted grosbeak show up. And they usually come like in about the middle of May. This is still a bit too early for them. But they show up. They are another South American migrant. They are starving when they get here. And they'll come to bird feeders right away. But here's just a picture of this male. It has all this bright white in the wings and the kind of reddish up here and that red. This is the female. Not at all very spectacular. Yeah. It's too bad. But that's life. And when they come, they will come in droves. Here's a female, there's a couple of males. There's another female there. Here's another male. There's an oriole right there. That looks like an oriole to me right there. This picture was taken like mid-May somewhere when these birds have come back from migration. But then, really, they're deep forest birds. And so once this feeding frenzy kind of sort of goes by, they just kind of disappear. And people always say to me, gee, you know, there are orioles here, but they're gone already, aren't they? And it's not that they're gone, like gone back south or something. They've just gone off into the woods to do the main thing that they live for, which is to create more baby birds. That's really the whole purpose of most animals, birds and mammals, is to create young, to keep the species going. And we like to think we have other purposes in life, but birds and animals don't really. And so they just head off into the woods and they get way quieter as they start to breed and have young. They don't want to attract attention anymore. And so all of a sudden, all that musical singing that you used to hear is now gone. Rose-breasted grosbeaks have a really fantastic song. I just want to play it for you. If you get to know bird songs, you can walk along through, like say on the Andes Rail Trail, just for example, you can just walk along through the woods, you will hear that sound. You may not ever see the bird, but you'll know that there are rose-breasted grosbeaks around. And the song travels for quite a long distance. We often go to the West Branch Preserve over on Route 10 there, and you hike up the mountain and you can hear this bird song all through the woods. It's really a wonderful thing. Yes.
To your point, I always thought the grosbeak only stuck around for about a month. So then how long do they actually...
They're here until, like, they get here in, say, mid-May, and they probably leave mid-August or so.
Oh, wow.
So it's surprising. Like, this is a very common thing. People think they're only here for a short time. It's only that they're more visible during that short time, and they're really here all summer long.
There's a
Yes.
there's a really great app. It's called Merlin. It's by the
Yeah.
Koreans,
Yes.
and
I
you,
have that.
yeah, you can use that. And,
You should definitely, if you like birds at all, this app that this woman is talking about, Merlin, it's put out by Cornell University and eBird, and it originally started as just like a way to visually identify birds, but now they have this thing where you can do a sound ID, and you just turn it on, and it listens, and it will tell you the names of the birds that are singing around you. It is such a cool thing.
very, very cool.
It's the kind of thing that we always used to say. Like I said, I've been a birder for a long time. We always used to say, geez, wouldn't it be great if there was some way that you could identify all these bird sounds?
Yeah.
And I mean, I, for many years, have just kind of studied bird sounds, and so I know them well. But if you're a new person out in the woods, you hear all this sound, you have no idea what's making what sound. Merlin is a boon. It's free. So there's no reason not to get it. If you have a smartphone and you like birds, you should get Merlin for sure. Thank you for reminding me to say that. Now, there are also birds that come to your bird feeder that you probably wish wouldn't come to your bird feeder. And this is one of them, the European starling, or people just call them starlings, you know. They're called starlings because when they fly, their body shape kind of looks like a star, and so people started calling them starlings for that reason. They're kind of a nice looking bird, like the males. You don't see it so much in this picture, but this is really kind of an iridescent blackish purple color, and when you see them in the sunlight, you can see it glowing, and they have all these little white spots. This is another bird that has both a summer plumage and a winter plumage. This is the winter plumage. They get all these little white dots on them, I guess for camouflage purposes, perhaps. But starlings are very gregarious, social birds. They travel in flocks. When a flock of starlings descends on your bird feeder in an hour, you have no bird seed. It's like they've just decimated it. And so people just wish starlings wouldn't come to their bird feeders, but they just do. It's hard. Yes.
You know what's funny? We live up high in the mountain, like 2,000 feet above sea level. When we come down to Lake 10, all your starlings, brewers, crackles, never come up
They
to the
never
mountain.
come up by us.
It's
That's
something to do
true.
with the elevation, I guess.
Yes, it is. That's definitely the case. Cardinals are another one that are kind of elevation sensitive, and they tend to be at lower elevations than higher elevations. That's definitely true. Starlings, they're actually an invasive species. I mean, we've all heard this name, invasive species, especially in regards to plants, of course, like multiflora, rose, that kind of thing. They're all invasive species. Starlings are too. They are not native to North America. In fact, this story right here, there was a group of people in the 1890s that thought every bird that Shakespeare ever mentioned should be in North America. Shakespeare mentioned starlings, and so this group brought 100 starlings over and let them go in Central Park down in New York City. Every single starling in this North American continent, and there are zillions of them now, came from those 100 birds.
Wow.
And it just shows you what can happen when you introduce a species to a region where that species didn't live. They don't have any natural predators, they don't have any competitors, and they just explode. And it's the same thing with plants too. Multiflora rose is just taken over, garlic mustard is taken over. They just explode. And so you have to be very careful about introducing new species into an area. But anyway, starlings are quite well known for flying in these big flocks. You know, if you say near people's barns, you'll find lots of starlings oftentimes. And you'll see like 200 or 300 of them. These are thousands of starlings flying. They call it a murmuration of starlings. There's all kinds of cool names for flocks of birds, like a murder of crows and an unkindness of ravens. There's all kinds of really neat names like that.
Are they the only birds that do that?
No,
Okay.
no. But this is very similar, like to
The
fish
birds.
swimming. Exactly. You know how fish swim in these big groups, and they all turn in the same direction. And it's an adaptation of animals that they're aware of their neighbors, and as they're flying, if someone starts moving this way, I'll move that way, and then everybody's going that way, you know. And there's all kinds of mathematical studies about how this actually happens and so on. It's a really interesting process. But let me just show you now. Here's a video. So here's a whole flock of starlings.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that once on a long drive to Florida one time. I just didn't know what kind of birds they were. I just thought it was one kind of bird, but I guess others do.
That is very probably starlings, that's right.
We had to pull over. We couldn't. We were like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, right. I've seen one neat video where a hawk flies into this murmuration of starlings, and so this big crowd of starlings is going along, and all of a sudden you see this little dark thing coming right at him, and they just kind of like separate as the hawk comes into the middle of them. It's a very cool thing to watch. So, let me just remind you of the kinds of bird seeds that you might want to put out if you're going to make bird feeders in your yard. For sure, black flower seeds. If you buy nothing else, buy those. And you can get them at the grocery store or, feed stores, seed stores, that kind of places. Secondly, Niger seeds. Those little tiny chocolate sprinkle kind of seeds. And then suet. Those would be the three things. You can get all kinds of other stuff, with dried fruit and raisins and all kinds of stuff in it. And that's, in my mind, that's mostly what we humans think birds probably like to eat, because we think that would be kind of nice to eat, crunchy peanuts and grapes and dried up raisins. Birds they are happy with seeds, but you can buy all kinds of stuff. That's all right. And then have a variety of kinds of feeders. So like there's we now know these are goldfinches. They're at one of these feeders here. These are another Niger kind of Niger seed feeder. Or you might have some kind of platform feeders like that to attract birds that would normally feed on the ground. They need a place to stand while they eat seeds at their feet, and that's how they know to eat food. They don't know to like reach up into a branch and grab something like that. And then you might also have suet in some kind of suet container, like either one of these. You can buy these cheap, like $2 or something at the grocery store. You can buy suet cakes, or you could make your own fancier sort of thing like that and get a red-bellied woodpecker at it. Then, like I keep saying, water. Here's a blue jay. It's drinking. That's the way birds drink. They reach down, they kind of suck up some water, and they lean their head back and swallow it down. Like some people take pills, they have to put their head back to swallow the pill. That's how birds swallow the water. They can't, like a horse, can just drink the water right up. Birds can't do that. They have to tilt their head back and swallow the water that way. Here's a female cardinal. Now we know that's what that is, right? There's that bright orange beak, but it's not a bright red bird. It's that kind of brownish, dullish brown color. This bird is having a great time taking a bath. They get in the water. It should only be like an inch or two deep. They don't want to drown the bird or anything like that. But they like to just sit right in the water and flap their wings and wiggle their tails and just splash the water all over the place. Birds have to be really careful about cleaning their feathers. I mean, that's their life right there, right? Their feathers. That's how they fly. That's how they get away. That's how they get to food. So you will see, if you spend time looking at birds, you'll see them preening, just taking their beak and running it along their feathers. They have to have baths. They'll take baths in puddles, in brooks. We actually, at our house, this is my house right here. This is our bird bath. It's a heated bird bath. You can see right there, that's the electric wire. I have an outlet down here, because this right here is the top of a waterfall that we built. Our yard is on 2 levels, and there's sort of a hill that comes down. And when we moved into the house, that was 17 years ago, Sandy sees that hill. She says, "Gee, we should have a waterfall." And so we built a waterfall. It was so fun. We just did it ourselves. We bought like rubber matting and then put it down. And I dug a big tank down here at the bottom where the water and a pump is, and the pump pumps it up the hill to up here, and then it comes out of that thing and goes back down. Birds love it, and so we designed the waterfall to have like a little fall and then a pool and another little fall and a pool, and the birds just park themselves in these pools and take baths or get drinks. It's kind of fun. But anyway, to do that, I had to have a source of electricity, so I put an outlet right by this waterfall, and in the wintertime, I plugged the bird bath into the outlet, and in the summertime, I plugged the pump for the waterfall into the outlet. It works great. It's just a fun feature of the yard. And so this is the heated one. Here's just a picture of another heated one. You can see the water is liquid, even though there's frost and everything all over the bird bath and snow on the ground. So it's always good to have a source of water for the birds. And so this is just to show you, this is a picture of my yard in the city of Oneonta. So here's our bird bath right there. There's our waterfall right there. I just took this a couple of days ago. I haven't started the waterfall back up yet. I take the pump in over the winter because I don't want things to freeze and snap. And you can see our different bird feeders. There's a couple of bird feeders there. There's one of those platform feeders right there. That's the feeder. That's the one, it has these openings, and that's where my wife will put the Pyrex cup full of cut up grapes in there, and the birds will come to that and eat the grapes. And the thing I want to talk to you about, and there's our suet right there on that thing. The thing I want to talk about next is these strange things, like that thing, and that conch thing, and over here, if you can see it, there's a suet there, and right on top of it is like just a big flat thing. Because the next unwanted visitor to your bird feeder is squirrels. Now, maybe, I don't know how at your house is, if you have many squirrels. I know some of my friends that live more out in the country don't really have many squirrels. But we live in the city, there are squirrels all over the place. They come to the feeder, they completely eat all your seed. Not only that, they chew up the feeder, so there's all these holes in it. Our feeders, sometimes they look like people stepped on them, and because the squirrels have been eating at them. And so those things are called squirrel baffles. They're trying to keep the squirrels from getting at the seed. Squirrels are very cheeky little guys. They want to know, when are you going to feed me next time? And so here's a close-up of, this is the squirrel baffle, and this is too. They're designed to keep the squirrels from climbing up those poles. Or here's a squirrel baffle. There's our suet, and there's that thing there to keep the squirrel from climbing down that wire and getting to the suet. This is the rule that you keep in mind regarding squirrels, the 5-7-9 rule. Squirrels can jump up from the ground 5 feet. They can jump across 7 feet. And they can jump down from a branch 9 feet down and accurately land on something. So, this baffle is designed to keep squirrels from jumping down out of the tree and getting on our suet. These ones are designed to keep them from crawling up the poles because I have the feeders high enough that they can't actually jump up to them. And these two things are separated far enough so they can't jump across from one to another. They're amazing creatures. They're so smart and so persistent. If you Google, if you like to Google things, if you Google Mission Impossible Squirrel, there's a hilarious video. This guy just built this obstacle course for squirrels. Bit by bit, he kept adding things like, you got to crawl through this tube, and then you got to jump around this thing that spins around like that, and then you got to jump over this thing, and then ride down this little car. It's hilarious to see what the squirrel has learned how to do, and he eventually gets to the food. You know? So Google that if you like that kind of thing. You can also get more elaborate kinds of squirrel feeders. This one, we actually had one of these until it stopped working. The idea is you have these batteries inside of this thing, this Wild Bill's zapper it's called. And when the squirrel has his hind feet on that thing and his front feet on these metal poles, they get zapped and they go flying away then. Or this one, when the squirrel gets on it, the thing starts spinning around and it spins the squirrel off.
Oh my god.
Here's
They were a lot of fun. We had that. We had those.
Here's there we go. So watch this now. Here comes the squirrel. He's reaching over, trying to get some seeds. As soon as he puts his full weight on it, and finally he gets I am getting out of here.
That's hysterical.
Now we had one of those in our yard. It's right here. So you got to watch. The squirrel is already there. I mean, I just took this thing with my iPhone, so it's not a really great video. But if you watch that area, see that squirrel going around and around, and he finally falls off. People go to all kinds of lengths to keep squirrels when they're bird feeders, as you can see. Now, there are also other feeder visitors. Deer will come to your feeders for sure. Turkeys will come to your feeders. There's a new idea of bird feeders, right? Turkeys. Raccoons will definitely come to your bird feeder. And squirrels, of course.
Bear.
Yeah, and bears will rip everything down. They're just so naturally strong, you know? But it's really dangerous, as I'm sure you all know.
That's why I don't have any bird feeders now. I'm afraid of those.
Yeah, well, you with good reason. Then there's a whole other element here. Cooper's hawks. Now they are coming to feed at the bird feeder too, but they're feeding on the little birds that are there at the bird feeder. Sharp-shinned hawks, Cooper hawks, they are all bird-eating hawks. They're a type of hawk called an accipiter, and they all have this really long tail that helps them maneuver through the trees in a forest, chasing little birds. And that's what they eat, is little juncos and chickadees and things like that. And they commonly come to your bird feeder trying to nail some mourning dove or chickadee or something like that. So, thanks for listening, but this, like I said before, I expected to have like 3 people here. This has been really great. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
How do you tell the difference of blue jay, male and female?
I was just gonna ask that.
Yeah, okay.
Color?
Some
I mean,
species, there is no difference, and blue jays are one.
Size.
I don't know a way to tell the difference between a male and a female blue jay.
I think the females seem to be a little smaller. I think.
I-
I don't know. I haven't looked
yeah.
under
And-
their tails to see what
and-
they are.
And size is hard to judge too, you know, unless you have 2 of them standing
Yeah.
side by
Well,
side,
it's
which you
just
don't
long
usually
enough.
do. And so there are plenty of species like chickadees. You can't really tell the difference very easily between male and female. Some of them you can, yes.
What about the gray one? I have one that it looks like a blue jay, but it's gray.
Or is
catbird?
it titmouse?
What's it?
The titmouse, they're smaller than a blue jay, but they have that same crest like that.
And the same markings and everything.
Yeah, I'd have to see it, but titmice are gray and look like that. Although they're quite a bit smaller than blue jays are.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
like it should be a blue jay, but it's
I
gray.
see, yeah. I have lots of people that send me, you know, emails with pictures saying, "What is this?" or a video that they, or like a recording they made of a bird sound saying, "What's this?" And I'm happy to like give folks my email and let you send me things if you like. That's fine with me. But it's hard to just say what it is from a description, really. Yes.
So when we moved in, previous owners had a bluebird box.
Yeah.
And our first year, we were successful. We had a family moved in, and then I stood at my second story deck and watched in horror a blue jay pull my 4 babies out and
Yeah.
eat them. I was
It's-
throwing dog biscuits at it. It did not help.
It is.
So the next year, I went to Audubon, and when we were a little late, they recommended this wire cage thing around the hole. So we put it in, and we had a male, and he was starting to build a nest. And then when we put this thing in, he was dubious. Nobody's come back as of this year,
Yeah.
even though the cage thing has been there for a year. So should
Yeah.
we scrap the whole thing and get a new box, or
Well, the main thing is the size of the hole.
right?
I think it's supposed to be 1.25 inches in diameter.
Mhm.
Too small for bigger birds. So what happens is in the box, the bluebirds make their nest down at the bottom of the box. And then there's usually inside of the box sort of a little plastic thing that the babies can kind of climb up when they want to get to the opening for the parents to feed them. And so the bigger birds then can't get their heads inside of that hole, but the bluebirds can fly in and out. That's the main thing, but
Well,
it's
see, this
definitely
was
true.
like I we can tell that the hole has been enlarged by either other birds, or,
Yeah,
and
right.
so like I
would
said,
definitely get a new box.
Audubon suggested this wire thing that
Yeah,
reduces, but we've not been successful. At least, I mean, it is still a little bit early, but
yeah, right. But
so we
the
might need a new
bluebirds are
box.
coming back for sure right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would get a new box. Yes, yeah.
So well,
And make sure it has the bluebird size hole.
yeah. Well, this was originally did. I think it's just they say that that's what happens over the years is squirrels and other birds
Squirrels,
and everything.
I mean,
They
It's
enlarge the
awful to
hole.
think that other birds are eating baby birds.
Oh, I watched
But
this
they
thing.
are.
Yeah.
It's just terrible. You think birds eat seed, right? Well, no. They eat baby birds. It's
I read
terrible.
eggs and anything.
And
I could
deer,
think you got my
the
house.
way the deer population has grown, they are decimating bird populations. Especially, there's lots of birds that nest on the ground. They eat the eggs. They eat the babies. You just don't think of that kind of stuff. Did you have a question back there?
Oh, I was actually another experience of a blue jay. I saw a blue jay eating a finch and sort of ripping its guts out. And, yeah, it was pretty bad. So do they always, like, are they carnivorous just scavengers is basically whenever
They're opportunists.
opportunistic. Yeah.
Yeah, they eat what they can, you know. Yeah. Now some birds, like chickadees, only eat seeds. I'm not aware of chickadees eating other birds, but the bigger birds like blue jays, crows for sure. Crows will land in a tree and just hop along in the tree branches looking for bird nests to get the eggs or the babies. Yeah. So, and they're just very opportunistic eaters.
I got 2 birdhouses right now with chickadees in them.
Yeah, which is great, isn't
I
it?
know.
Yeah.
Most of them were in the trees, and people say, "You don't believe it." I said, "Yeah."
Yeah, their chickadees are cavity nesters, and they like bird boxes, just like bluebirds and swallows.
How do I keep the tree swallows out of the bluebird?
Well, I have an answer for that too. So it's very common that if you have a bluebird box, swallows will come to that box. And so the thing, and swallows are more aggressive than bluebirds are. Usually in the battle between 2 males, the swallows will win. So what you do is you have 2 boxes, either side by side or even on the same pole, say facing in different directions. And the swallows will not let another swallow couple come to that other box, but they will let bluebirds come to it. And
No
in fact, if I were to keep on going for another hour, I have a whole thing. I can show you videos of swallows and bluebirds happily living side by side in this kind of arrangement. So you have, like, say, 1 box here and 1 box there,
Oh,
and that's
That's
definitely a good solution.
good.
Any other questions?
Is there any way to attract a brown creeper?
Well, not that I know of. So brown creepers, they nest in the woods, and actually the way they nest is they find bark that's kind of coming off the tree, and they build their nest up under the bark, like with cobwebs and plant fibers and stuff like that. And they're making kind of like an Oriole hammock thing, but underneath the bark, they lay their eggs in there, and the babies are like under that bark. And so they're not really interested in like bird boxes in any way, and they only eat bugs as far as I'm aware. They don't eat seeds, and so I'm not aware of any way to get brown creepers to come
Are
to
they
your
night
yard.
birds?
Oh no, they're
Are they
in the
day
daytime.
birds?
Yeah.
What's the one that comes out at night like that?
Well, there are a number of birds that are basically nocturnal. There are
whippoorwill.
Yeah, whippoorwills, exactly what I was
One
going to
more.
say. And woodcocks.
Yeah, woodcock.
Woodcocks are a bird that right around this time of year, mid-April or so, if you go out in the evening, you'll hear these birds going, eat, eat. Those are woodcocks.
Oh, okay.
And they have this really cool thing where they go flying up in the air, and as they fly, their wings make this singing sound. And so the males fly up in the air like 200 or 300 feet in the air, and then they just kind of like spiral fall down to earth again, and their wings are making this sound the whole time. This is the time woodcocks are, and they're nocturnal kinds of birds.
You can win it.
Most people are leaving, but I'm happy.